Alright, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Freedom Fighters podcast. I am your host, Griffon Gaming, aka Bryce, whichever you know me by, pretty irrelevant at this point, and we got a couple of fun-filled topics to talk about. One of them more nationally based, one of them really only relevant to the state of Wisconsin, one of them more culturally based. We'll just put it that way. If you enjoy my work, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And without further ado, let's dive in. The first order of business tonight, for those who've been living under a rock or are completely unaware of what happened, Alec Baldwin is going to trial for the murder of one of his employees. At the time, they initially reported that a prop gun had just been faulty and had discharged at a really inopportune time. But it was later revealed that it was a real gun, and that the person who had handed Alec Baldwin the gun had said that the gun was cold, which meant that it was not loaded. And Alec Baldwin proceeded to point it in the direction of one of his camera crew, and he pulled the trigger, except it wasn't cold. It was loaded, it shot, and it killed her. Very tragic incident indeed. I would rather not see shit like that happen. Heart goes out to her family. But Alec Baldwin will be going to trial for that, and all I gotta say is good. Lock the fucker up. Listen, you're not gonna be able to get him for first degree, obviously. Alec Baldwin, there is no way that Alec Baldwin could have premeditated her murder. Even if he did, there's nothing really to say that he did premeditate her murder. And if he had, he would have had to have had somebody working alongside him in order to do so. So, first degree, very unlikely. Second degree is also very unlikely, because I think unless they can prove that Alec Baldwin had intent on killing her, they're not going to be able to get her with that one, or get him with that one. So more than likely what is going to happen is Alec Baldwin is going to get third degree unintentional manslaughter, reckless homicide, whatever you want to call it. For his complete negligence. He didn't bother to check the gun, which every gun owner that is even remotely responsible will always treat a gun as load. Even if they've checked, even if they know full well there is not a single goddamn bullet in this gun, they will treat it as live. That's why you don't typically see gun owners pointing a gun at somebody, even jokingly, unless they intend to actually shoot. Because you don't do that. You never know. Even if you think you know, you don't. He did not bother to check the gun. He just took somebody else at their word. He pointed it and he fired it. Alec Baldwin absolutely deserves to be locked up. And anybody who tries to say otherwise loses any credibility in social discourse, in my opinion, especially when it comes to firearms. Because a lot of people that'll try to back up Alec Baldwin are going to be the lefty kind of people, where Hollywood is full of people who think like them anyways. And when I say left, because I've had some left-leaning libertarians try and just tell me not to do this. Okay, I'm referring to the woke culture, the absolute insane far left authoritarian dickbags. We'll just clarify it there and leave it at that. They're going to go to Alec Baldwin's aid because they like these Hollywood types. Because a lot of them think and act like they do. And they're the ones pushing for the gun control and all this other stuff. When it comes to guns, whether you're for gun control or against it, if you defend Alec Baldwin, you lose any credibility in my eyes. Because there is absolutely no way that you could possibly defend the complete irresponsibility on his end. There's none. Absolutely no argument. It's not even like a wishy-washy, maybe he's in the wrong, maybe he's not. No. There is nothing. No way you can defend Alec Baldwin for his negligence. And I genuinely hope he gets locked up for what he did, because he deserves nothing less at this point. Absolutely not. Especially when Alec Baldwin, like, for all the gun control that he pushes for, like, he is somebody who's been involved in a lot of films and handled a lot of firearms. He's been trained to use firearms. Whether he thinks they're needed or not, he's been trained to use them. He knows better. Absolutely zero excuse for his actions. And I hope to God the judge does not let him off light for this, because that inexcusable. other news tonight, it's a little bit older, from like 4 days ago. Wisconsin bill proposes extended work hours for children under 16. So, I've looked through the article. And what it does is it wants to make it so that 14 and 15-year-olds will be able to work until 9:30 p.m. on school nights, as opposed to 7 p.m. where it's set right now. And during non-school nights, they'd be able to work until 11 p.m. Whereas currently they can only work until 9. Now, normally I really wouldn't care. You know, the libertarian side of me says, well, really, the government shouldn't be regulating work hours anyways, but to each their own, I guess. But the problem is, as somebody who's graduated from high school fairly recently, I mean, it's a little ways out now. I'm not even going to pretend to know anybody that goes to school in my hometown anymore. All my friends are long gone, but from that high school. But I've graduated recently enough where I could tell you our public school system, so long as the teacher is not showing up to school with drugs in their system. It's not even the fact that they use drugs. It's as long as they aren't showing up to school with drugs in their system. Same thing with alcohol. Public schools don't care if your teacher's an alcoholic, so long as they're not showing up to work drunk. Obviously, you're working with kids. You can't be a pedophile. And you also can't say anything that the social justice mob would disapprove of. But as long as you avoid doing any of those things, if you're not a drug user showing up to work high, if you're not an alcoholic showing up to work drunk, if you don't diddle kids, and you don't go against the woke mob, teaching is probably the safest job you could work. You could be god awful at your job and you will not get fired. It's just a fact, you won't. And what tends to happen at these schools is it doesn't matter if you're a good teacher or an awful teacher. A vast majority of the teachers in public schools will pile on the homework. You will have 3 to 4 classes in the same day, if not more. I'm just accounting for the Common Core classes right off the top of my head. You will have 3 to 4 teachers every day that will assign you homework every day. And it is not short, quick, easy assignments either. So you will have teachers who are awful at explaining things, then turn around and give you a really long assignment to go along with some other teachers who some of them might be good at their job. You know, there were a couple teachers at my school who were exceptional at their job. My law and gov teacher was worthy of being a college professor, and a damn good one at that. Probably could be one of the best in the country. But the good teachers in public schools are few and far between. And I think parents are realizing that now. So not only are a lot of the teachers really bad at their job, whether they just don't care, or they just were never good at it in the first place, is kind of irrelevant. They will then turn around and pile on the homework, so you have to waste time trying to teach yourself what they were supposed to do, and then complete a really long assignment on top of it, and you'll have to do that with at least half the teachers that assigned you homework. The other half, you already know what you're supposed to do, but you'll be so burnt out from reteaching yourself what the other teachers are supposed to teach you that you're just not going to want to do the damn homework. So now, on top of having these really long assignments being assigned to you from a lot of really bad teachers, and a couple good ones, like I said, there were some exceptional teachers at the school I went to. But there were some that I definitely think probably didn't deserve their job. But they all of them that were core class teachers, aside from one, would pile on the homework. Good teachers, bad teachers, horrible teachers, it didn't matter. There was one core class teacher that didn't pile on the homework. That was it. All the others would pile on the homework. And it gets to be overwhelming, especially when most of those teachers are subpar at their job. Nice people, I'm not going to argue that point. Most of them are nice people. There are very few teachers you will run into that are actually just grade A assholes. But that doesn't make them good at their job either. That just makes them a nice person. That just means if I saw them outside of school, I wouldn't be against saying hi to them. It doesn't mean they were good at their job. So now on top of that, you want to push kids that have to work until 9:30 on school nights and 11 o'clock on any other night. Now, if we had privatized schooling, or hell, even if we just held our public teachers accountable for being at least somewhat good at their job, or at least pretending like they cared, this wouldn't be as bad of a thing. I still don't necessarily think it'd be a great thing, because it's pretty obvious that this bill is being passed to try and alleviate some of these businesses that are struggling to bring employees in. That's why this bill's being passed. But I don't think it's a great thing. But at least if you didn't have to reteach yourself what the teacher didn't do properly in the first place, it's not the worst thing in the world. The problem is our public schooling system does not hold a teacher accountable, so on top of the fact that most of the teachers are going to be getting paid about the same wage anyways, because it's pretty close to a fixed wage, there's no accountability to it. So it doesn't matter if they're exceptional or exceeding expectations with their job, or if they are hands down the worst teacher you've ever had. They will all get paid roughly the same wage. They might get paid more or less depending on how long they've worked there, but it's pretty close to about the same. And now you want kids working till about 10 o'clock. On top of that. You know what that's going to have happen? You're going to probably have parents encourage their kids to just not work when school's going on. Maybe have them get a summertime job so they get some work experience. But they're not going to work during public school years. Kind of like college students tend to do in college, where they'll work during the summer to pay their tuition. That'll be what kids are doing for public school. Obviously they're not paying their tuition, but they're getting their work experience during the summer, maybe. And then they're just not working the other 9 months. That's not any better than what we have going on right now. So this is a very, very poorly thought out bill. It's one that, I never thought I'd say this, but this is definitely a bill I hope Tony Evers does veto. I don't like Evers as a governor. I think he's been awful. I think Wisconsin has actually had a very long string of awful governors. And Evers is just an extension of that long list of awful governors. But I hope he vetoes this, because this is not a very good bill. It is very poorly constructed. It is not going to solve the problems that it intends to solve. And it is actually just going to create more problems on top of it. So, for once, Evers, do the right thing and just shut this down. Do not let it pass. That is one of your powers as the executive of Wisconsin's government. Veto it. Don't even give it a second thought. The moment this thing shows up on your desk, just veto it. There are other ways to solve these problems that don't involve forcing kids that are already dealing with a very, very poor public school system to have to work for very, very minimal wages. Those minimum wage jobs that the left, like the Democrat types, keep pushing is we need to make it a living wage type stuff. the minimum wage jobs that they're trying to raise the wages on, those are the jobs that the 14 and 15-year-olds are taking. And you want them to work later on piss poor paychecks. Just awful. Last but not least, this is probably gonna ultimately end up being a shorter episode than what I'm used to, or that what I intend to anyways. But so I wouldn't necessarily say the person that I'm about to talk about is necessarily relevant, other than they just started a show on Netflix, I believe. I only know this because of one of my friends, by the way, who actually has a YouTube channel of his own. Let me see if I can pull up his channel quick. So feel free to check out in your own time. Peyton Rogers. I will leave a link in the description below. He tackles more of like mental health issues with his channel. But yeah, I'll leave a link in the description below. Feel free to check him out. But he was talking about Colin Kaepernick's new show. And I'm going to use this time to address anybody who idolizes Colin Kaepernick in any way. Could be positive or negative. You could overly hate the guy because you think he's unpatriotic, hates this country, is borderline racist himself, just towards white people. You feel however you want about what he did, from that point of view. You could think that he was a hero who was standing up for racial injustice in America, and think that he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize for what he did. I am going to address both crowds right now and tell you why I definitely will not be watching Colin Kaepernick's new show. And I would encourage anybody who's listening to this not to do it. Now, going back to the Law and Gov class that I brought up earlier, like I said, he was an exceptional teacher. But in 2016, when I was going through that class, he brought up Colin Kaepernick kneeling for the national anthem. Now, I live in a fairly conservative town, so most of the kids in the class were bashing Kaepernick for kneeling, saying how it was disrespectful to the flag and the military and all this other stuff. And mean, I agree to an extent. I'm not going to say he doesn't have a right to do it, but I would definitely agree that it's disrespectful. What I will say is that I don't think Kaepernick should lose his job over that. What you're running into there when you try to say that he should not be allowed to play in the NFL because he knelt for the national anthem is no different than what the woke mob did to John Gruden. Just an entirely different issue. Because you guys, just as much as the people who idolize him as being this hero, you guys, the people that want to talk about how unpatriotic he is, you have given him just as much credence as the people who idolize him. The answer I gave for how I felt when I saw the picture that he pulled up, because what he did, our teacher, was he showed a couple of different pictures that were on the basis of social issues that had happened, whether they were past or present, didn't matter. But that image came up, and it was an image of Kaepernick kneeling. And my exact answer was Colin Kaepernick is attention seeking. Colin Kaepernick was not kneeling for the national anthem because he thought that there was actual racial injustice in America. He could honestly care less if there's racial injustice in this country or not. Because the week that he did that, the first week that he knelt for the anthem, was the first week he had gotten benched. Because he was having a very, very subpar 2016 season. And he had been actually getting himself in a lot of controversy himself by wearing stuff like a Fidel Castro shirt in heavily Cuban-populated Miami, Florida after the Dolphins game. A lot of really bullshit antics like that. Colin Kaepernick does not have a job in the NFL. Not because of what he did in regards to kneeling for the anthem. Because there are a lot of players who knelt for the national anthem who still to this day have their job. Much less maintain their job after that. Trust me, Colin Kaepernick is not blackballed by the league because of his stances. Roger Goodell is a very, very woke person. Say what you want about what John Gruden said in his email in regards to Michael Sam, but John Gruden had a point. Roger Goodell had no business pressuring the Rams to waste any draft pick on Michael Sam solely because of his sexual preference. If they wanted to draft Michael Sam because of Michael Sam's talent, fine. But as we know by the fact that Michael Sam didn't last very long in the NFL, very likely that was not the case. It was very likely that he just was not NFL ready, and he was drafted solely because he is sexually attracted to men. And Roger Goodell wanted those sweet, woke brownie points. So trust me, Roger Goodell is not blackballing Colin Kaepernick from the NFL. Colin Kaepernick does not have a job in the NFL for two reasons. One, Colin Kaepernick was on a very, very steep decline in 2016. Pretty much immediately after, I'd say, the 2013 season, he began to fall off. But 2016, he took a nosedive. And that was 5 years ago, and he's played next to no football since 2016. So I would take a wild guess that he definitely hasn't improved as an NFL player. Oh, could just be me. But I find it very hard to believe that a quarterback that was already on the decline, and a pretty rapid one at that, is suddenly going to be even the same player that they were when they left. But then the second reason for that is Colin Kaepernick not being in the NFL is actually more beneficial to Colin Kaepernick than if he was in the NFL. Because so long as Colin Kaepernick does not have a job in the NFL, and that's why when he did his little practice tryout with the NFL teams that were even remotely interested in bringing him on, he went out of his way to alienate them. Because it was never about getting an NFL job. It was about the attention. Colin Kaepernick, and this is why Colin Kaepernick pisses me off. Colin Kaepernick took advantage of the fact that somebody died. Justified or not, irrelevant. He took advantage of the fact that somebody died to make a fat check. He took advantage of the fact that somebody had died in a very controversial topic to get signed to a fat contract from Mr. Sweatshops themselves, Nike. You never see Colin Kaepernick making public appearances to discuss racial injustice in America. Whether it exists or not, I would at least give Colin Kaepernick credence where it was earned if he genuinely stood up for the matter. I would heavily dispute him on it, because the reality is that a vast majority of city cops just treat everyone like shit. Newsflash, Democrats like control and Republicans aren't much different. So what tends to happen is the cops will do their bidding and throw people away regardless of if they're deserving of it or not. Because the cop gets paid for bringing people in. That's their MO. Now, small town cops, can still be a crooked business, but for different reasons. You're not typically going behind bars with a small town cop, but there are people that they will tend to ignore. But I digress. You're trying to look at something through the lens of race where it does not apply. And the only reason it even looks like it does apply is because the media twists it so that it looks like it does. And Colin Kaepernick took advantage of emotions running high to be like, hey, my NFL career is on its way out. I'm going to use this to make far more cash than I ever would in the National Football League. And now he's getting paid by EA to have his likeness in the game because he's not under NFL contract, so they have to pay him for his likeness. So he's getting a fat contract from Nike and he's getting a fat contract from EA. He's making next to no public appearances. He only puts out a couple ads a year. Now he's got his own TV show. He was never out protesting. So what are you idolizing him for? If you want to idolize him because he got paid, I mean he did it in a pretty shitty way, but sure, whatever. Okay, yeah, the man got his bag. Good job. Give him a round of applause for taking advantage of someone's death to make bank. That's what pisses me off about Kaepernick. Not only is he not genuine about what he claims to be fighting for, but he took advantage of the fact that somebody died to propel his entire fucking brand. And it makes me sick to my goddamn stomach. I will never respect him because he's a fake who took advantage of someone's tragic passing to make a lot of money, and he does not feel even remotely remorseful about it. And I'm sorry to you guys out there who idolize Kaepernick, but I don't care anymore. I've been preaching this for the 5 years since he infamously took a knee for the national anthem. I will continue to emphasize this. But what Colin Kaepernick did is honestly such a piece of shit move that I have no respect for the man whatsoever. Fuck him. Anyways, that is probably going to wrap up today's episode. If you would like to be a guest on a future episode, I will leave in the link below, or leave links below for ways that you and I can get in touch and discuss the matter. Discuss what we're going to talk about and whatnot, and how we're going to do it. And really, I don't care what your political beliefs are. You could be, I don't care. You could be a full-blown communist. I welcome anybody on this. And honestly, I think it would be a far more interesting conversation than to bring just another libertarian on. Anyways, guys, that'll do it for this episode. Feel free to check out Peyton's channel. Until next time, peace.